What made your ex the crazy ex? The chick I was dating very briefly did this to me a week after we broke up. We'd been dating maybe 6 weeks at most, and her first voicemail in this post-breakup phone bomb was, "Hey, haven't heard from you in a few days. Getting worried. Call and let me know you're okay." A week after I told her, "Not only are we through, I never want to see or hear from you again. Ever." And when I didn't answer that call, I proceeded to light up my phone for hours. The next day, one call, "Hey, still haven't heard from you. I dropped my daughter off with a friend and drove by your house, but you weren't home. So I'm really getting worried." I called her back after that one, reiterated that I never wanted to hear from her again, told her the next time she rings me or texts me, I will call the cops. Thought that was the end of it. Then my best friend, who I hadn't had a chance to talk to about this, invites me to meet his first girlfriend after his really crazy off-the-hook divorce from his own crazy ex. And it's my crazy ex. She found someone I know who was on the market and started dating him, and then kept pressuring him to invite me to hang out with him. Dude didn't break up with her, so I had to avoid him for the most of the next entire year. His ex-girlfriend is a serious case of clingy. Story 2. I was 17 when I moved in with a 24-year-old guy I'd been dating for a couple of months. After about 1 to 2 months of living together, I'd mostly lost my chances to keep in touch with my family and friends. I couldn't meet anyone without his presence. I once answered my cell phone when my mom called to say hi and blabber about something pointless. In the beginning of the phone call, I made the mistake of going out for a smoke. When I had finished the phone call and went back in, I got a good roughening for having stuff to hide. I didn't even have permission to even go for a walk or to the grocery store alone. I lived with him for nearly a year. I don't know why I stayed for so long. Maybe I was too scared to leave, too embarrassed to admit to my family and friends that I had made a bad decision when I started going out with him in the first place. One time he called me to tell me that he had been caught on the highway speeding, on speed, and having a race with the police. He said he would be getting home from jail the next morning. I instantly called my mother, but then would spend the next night with me gathering my stuff in our car and taking me back home. I got some super angry and sometimes begging phone calls from him for the next few weeks, but I never saw him again. Story 3. During our arguments, he would hurt himself and knock out, and I'd have to pick him up from overpasses. He admitted it was all for my attention. I lost patience with that after a while and tried to break up with him. He got extremely emotional and was bawling, so I changed it to a break. We never ended up on a break. 6 months later, I finally ended it. He was fine about it. Then, a week later on New Year's Eve, I invited him over since I'm having a party, since he needed to pick up a few things anyways. He was living with me 4 to 7 nights a week. Everything went well. Then about a week or so later, I ran out of birth control pills, so I went to grab my next pack. My entire birth control drawer was empty. My plan B, pills, protections, everything. At this time, I was going to Planned Parenthood, who gives you 12 months worth at a time. I called him, furious. He said he took it all so I wouldn't sleep around, because he was my first and it was 3 years. So of course I'd sleep around. Sarcasm. And threw it away, along with our house key he had. I told him I never wanted to hear from him again. So we changed our locks. I didn't know who he was anymore and didn't trust him at that point. And I had to go to Planned Parenthood to get more pills the next day. It's hilarious now, but at the time it was a wreck. That was not the guy I fell in love with. And I got stuck for way too long in a toxic relationship. This isn't even touching on the fact he would text me nonstop when I was out with friends or would guilt trip me into abandoning my friends because he gave up his friends for me. Hell no. I have not talked to him since. Good riddance. These things happened during the last year or year and a half of our relationship. The first half of it was awesome. I got too much handed to him too soon in life and felt the need to overwork himself, leading him to unrealistic expectations in the relationship. I learned something very important through this. I'll always have my own life that has significance outside of a romantic relationship. Hobbies, friends, passions, anything that doesn't have you place your entire existence upon another person. Story 4. He pretended he was passing away twice. The second time, I messaged his friend on Facebook, got his number and gave him a call. My ex was at his best friend's house watching a movie. Meanwhile, he was texting me from the hospital bed saying how I caused him to bit his ends rope and I broke up with him. I never let him know that I knew he was lying. Them things escalated to him threatening to key my car. His friends publicly wrote on FB about how I needed to be harmed, and it was about ruining my tires. Pretty harsh threats when you consider that I dumped him after finding out he cheated 6 times. Reasons for cheating? I'm writing a dating book. I need perspective. Let me add that during the entire year we were dating, I only know that his first and last name are real. He created a totally different life only around me. Anything you can think of was a lie. Family, friends, interests, school, jobs, etc. I never knew this person at all. Story 5. She said she had acute lymphocytic leukemia because I had moved on after our umpteenth breakup and was talking to another girl. Found out later she was making it all up. After her mother called my mother, we were like 15 to 16 years old, accusing me of putting salt in her car engine and stealing her jewelry. All more lies. My mother responded with, "Well, that's terrible, but by the way, how is Harvest King's ex-girlfriend's cancer treatment going?" And her mom was like, what? This girl claimed to undergo an experimental treatment that cured the cancer, including a bandage covering up the scar. She refused to let me see the scar and said this appeared weeks later because the doctor advised her to go tanning after the surgery to tan away the scar. Her cancer doctor told her to go get some radiation to get rid of the scar. That's right, folks. Anyways, crazy. Story 6. When she parked her car in the middle of the street and tried to take my kids from their school, getting into an actual fight with school security, forcing my kids into her car and driving to her apartment where she parked sideways, on the grass, on the adjacent complex's front lawn, refusing to open the door when the cops showed up only to fight 3 cops when they finally got in the house, resulting in her arrest on 5 felony counts and a breathalyzer reading of .41. The crazy part was when she could not fathom why the courts decided I was the best choice for permanent custody, claims to have no recollection of the incident, nor the time she showed up to court to face the charges and was arrested for falsifying documents and disorderly conduct for being intoxicated at the hearing. Has no idea why my daughters want nothing to do with her. Her idea of quality time is clearly a bit extreme. Story 7. Girl number 1. Fiery redhead. Real powder keg. Short fuse. Big kaboom. I dumped her for breaking a pretty big promise to me. She came over to my house to do the post-breakup apology thing. I don't take people back, as a rule, so I said no. She flipped and attacked me. I dragged her out of the house and locked the door. She jumped my fence, circled around, and came in through the sliding glass door and attacked me again. Girl number 2. Together for 8 years, engaged. We're picking out kids' names. She went on vacation with some mutual friends and came back with a new boyfriend. Stole a bunch of my stuff. Baby photos, my diploma, wedding rings, etc. and moved out. Girl number 3. Nice deaf girl. Her father was super cruel when she was little. Her ex-boyfriends were ride schmucks, terrible as all get out. I wasn't. I didn't fight, hit, get angry. So she filled the role of the opposer herself several times over. That bit is my fault. I should have left and stayed gone after the first time. Took a few more to get some sense into me. Story 8. Not my ex, but a friend of mine. They dated for a little while. She was always getting outrageously upset over little stuff, and finally my buddy goes over to her house to talk with her and tell her they're breaking up. He did it at her house while her parents were home on purpose in an attempt to minimize the freakout. Anyway, she doesn't take the news very well. Screams and cries and causes this huge scene. So much, in fact, that she screams my buddy right out of the house and he's just trying to get into his car and go home now. Her parents are restraining her while he attempts a getaway, but she gets free and picks up a rock and throws it at his car, breaking the window. The best part of the story is that from then on, everyone called her Geodude. It's been like 6 years since they broke up, and most of my friends still call her that. And it's still funny every time. Story 9. My time has come. My crazy ex was actually my crazy girlfriend for a long time. I was deeply in love with her for a lot of reasons, but we had a terrible relationship. She was 13 years older than me, and so she was always trying to change me to make me more adult and responsible, which I figured was fine because I should grow up anyways. The problem was she was just highly critical of everything I did and who I was. Eventually, she became emotionally cruel, wanting to sleep with other guys and such, so we explored having a more open relationship. Problem was, she couldn't tolerate the idea of me sleeping with other women, so it became a double standard. One night she wanted to have a triad with a couple people I knew. I suggested that this was a bad idea. I should have run, but I didn't. A few months later, we got into a fight and she heard me about 20 times. For some reason, I still didn't run. A few months later, we got into a fight at a bar. She left, so I went home and went to sleep. At about 5 a.m., she stumbled home to find the door locked and she didn't have her keys. After, apparently, about an hour trying to find a way in, She broke the window and came rushing into our room, screaming and yanking the covers off of me. I got up to try to get away from her, but she started hurting me over and over again. I was cornered, so I tried to push her out of the way so I could make a run for it, but that didn't work. She just kept hurting me. I finally grabbed her and threw her onto the bed and made a run for it. She ran downstairs to my roommate, whose children were asleep in the next room, screaming that I just harmed her. He comes up. I leave because she's apparently going to call the cops. Next day, she serves me with a restraining order and has her ex come pick up my stuff in his truck. He breaks the stuff that they didn't want to keep and dumps it in my buddy's driveway. She then went around town telling anyone who will listen that I'm a woman beater and deserve to be in jail. Story 10. Oh, let's see. While we were dating, he told me he was just using me for, and when I got upset, he said he only said that to make sure I loved him. Accused me of only having intimacy with him to get off, since only witches have intimacy to enjoy it. Took pictures of me when I was asleep and then sent them to my new boyfriend when I got one after the breakup. Tried to break into my house to return my things. Stalked me in plain sight, parking outside of my apartment or work just watching. Accused me years later of giving him an STD. Always finds my new addresses and phone numbers. Leaves me crying VMs and shows up in the middle of the night. Always figures out my new email addresses and goes from telling me how much he misses me to what a life-ruining witch I am. Keeps creating new profiles on Facebook and Twitter to send me messages. I've been broken up for 15 years and only dated 9 months. Story 11. Not my ex, since it lasted one date. A couple years back when I was in college, one of my buddy's girlfriends set me up with one of her friends. I'd gone to a predominantly male school for engineering. She and her friend both went up to some fashion design school in the city. I had welcomed the idea of something other than fueled testosterone, so I said, screw it. Let's do it. We met up in the city, and she was pretty cute, but there was something awful about this girl that I couldn't put my finger on quite yet. We walked around for a while, talking, generally having a good time. We decided to get dinner on the opposite side of town. So we took her car, since I'd taken the train in. When we park, she asks if I have any money for the meter. So he asked, how much do you need? She responds, about $3.50. $3.50? Well, it was about that time I realized that this wasn't no cute girl. No, sir. This was a 16-foot-tall crustacean from the Paleozoic era. I ain't giving you no $3.50, monster. And then I slammed the door and called my train home. Story 12. She stole my puppy. We dated for 2 months when she became insanely jealous and didn't trust me at all. I finally couldn't deal with it anymore and told her to leave my apartment. At the time, I worked out of state, about 1 hour away, and received a call from my roommate stating, your dog and his cage are all gone. He was in on it. I went to court several times and won default judgment because she was too stupid to show up to the correct courtroom. She filed an appeal and the court allowed it. The next time we showed to court, her boyfriend had just passed away. Postponed the court date further. The third time we went to court to get my dog, she didn't show again and the judge called her. Of course she didn't answer. The fourth time we went to court, she showed and the judge laid the law and made her give my precious dog back to me. I flat out should have done terrible things to her. She was hot as hell, but a crappy lady. My dog is 8 and is happy as hell. So am I. I'm married now too. Sounds like she was a real positive influence in his life. Story 13. Oh God, where do I start? Not only stalking me himself, but sending friends to do it. Hey, there's a car parked across the street watching our house. That's your ex? Yep. Filed a false CPS claim. They laughed when they showed up to investigate. Clearly it wasn't the case. The detective on scene did warn me. Sounds like you have an angry ex. Yep. Broke into my apartment on repeated occasions to destroy my personal belongings. Bleach in my and the baby's clothes. Permanent wave solution in my shampoo. Got the Freon cord in my fridge, which he knew I couldn't afford to replace, and which, lest this not be obvious, contained food for his child. Poured water in my electronics, and so forth. Followed me and ruined my tires when I went inside anywhere. I ended up getting a Pep Boys card so I could replace them as needed. In about 6 months, I bought 8 tires. Once, he ruined 2 of them, leaving me stranded 40 miles from home. Those were the big ones. The night we broke up, he threw me and the baby out. My clothes, the baby's crib, everything. Out in the yard. Put the baby in my arms and pushed me out the door. And when I told him I had nowhere to go, he told me, figure it out. And then warned me if my things wasn't off his lawn by morning, he'd take it to a landfill. This makes his talking even more absurd. He's the one who ended it. But somehow I was the bad guy. Story 14.
You're not going anywhere.
The scream was primal and raw. resounding with perfect menace. Our weekend fights had grown fiercer, even more warlike. I decided, as always, to take a walk to cool down. I pushed past her, out into the warm Florida night. Of course, she followed. On foot, I outdistanced her, which only served to fan her fury, but before long I could no longer hear the haunting echo of her screams. Through dumb luck, I had her car keys, as I had driven that night. Safe in the knowledge she couldn't follow, I walked a peaceful stretch of the Halifax River while sifting through my troubled thoughts. 10 minutes passed. 15. Then, somewhere off in the distance, a motor. It grew steadily louder, gaining in noise and momentum as it disrupted the sanctity of the thick night air. At nearly 3 a.m., the roads were empty, or almost empty. I turned to look and saw the beam of a single headlamp slicing its way through the fog. She was riding my motorcycle. Now my girlfriend had never ridden my motorcycle before, or any motorcycle for that matter. She knocked it over once when I wasn't home and hadn't even been able to lift it. Yet here she was, shifting, pumping the clutch, her long blonde hair flowing behind her as she bore down on me. Yeah! She leapt. I kid you not. At the very last second, already at a loss for control, my girlfriend leapt from my motorcycle and flying tackled me. Arms and legs flailing, we rolled over and over each other in the mud-soaked embankment. We were scratched. My bike ended up just beyond us, inverted, caught upside down in a thick hedge. As if playing some sick cosmic joke, the blinker was flipped on. Tick, 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 tick. I rose, screaming, brushing myself off in the dim, spectral glow of that flashing orange light. My eyes stung. Everything smelled heavily of gasoline. Another light flared, and that's when I looked up and saw the police car. Crap. My girlfriend stood, her face twisted in a horrible, Grinch-like smile. "Arrest him!" she screeched. "He doesn't have his motorcycle license. His bike isn't even registered, and he has no insurance." No, all of these things were true. I just bought the bike from my ex-doormate and hadn't sorted any of that stuff out yet. So I said nothing, watching gas drip from my bike in hypnotic tune to the blinker. My girlfriend's maniacal laughter only intensified as the cop approached, taking the whole scene in. "Let me see your license," he told her. "My license?" she shrieked in disbelief. "No, his license. He's the one who has no license. He's the one you want." "Ma'am," he reiterated calmly, "I'm gonna need your license." As you can imagine, my girlfriend didn't take this well. Things escalated very quickly. Rather than stay calm and keep her cool, she did exactly the opposite. She screamed, yelled, pointed, threatened, and acted all sorts of outraged. In short, she dug herself deep. I even tried to save her, casting her sideways glances and giving her the chill out look, but she was too far gone, too psychotic. By the time she realized the handcuffs were out, it was already too late. So here I am, 3 a.m., covered in gas, scratched up from head to toe, my bike about to be towed away. As her hands go behind her back and she's being led into the cop car, my girlfriend looks me straight in the eye and lets out a hysterical laugh. "You're going to jail! You deserve it too! Screw you! See you in jail!" I think it was at this exact moment the officer took pity on me. Walking up to me, he pointed out my motorcycle. "Can you start that thing and ride it out of here?" I stood for a moment in shock before nodding numbly. "Then go." Holy heck. Holy heck. I got on the bike, kicked it alive, and nothing. The gas had flooded. Over and over I kicked it, hoping against my hope my bike wouldn't have to be towed. Inside the cop car, my girlfriend realizes what's going on. She's screaming and shrieking and banging her head against the glass door. The cop just shakes his head. "You know how to pick 'em." Vroom. My bike suddenly starts. I have no idea how, but his sound has never been so sweet. The cop nods to me, tells me to head right home, and lets me know where I can bail this lunatic out. If I want to, that is. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is just an example of what made my ex crazy. Story 15. After 12 years of marriage and 3 kids, my wife decides that she's wasting her life as a wife and mother. She convinced me to pay for a nanny that I could not afford so she could have a string of affairs with, number 1, her old boyfriend from high school who was married with 2 kids, number 2, my son's karate instructor, number 3, a busboy at a restaurant, number 4, at least 2 others I could not identify. Note, she bought her lover's kids' Christmas presents with our kids' money when I was struggling to pay the bills. I later discovered she was wasting all my income away in gifts, clothes, and partying.
She then said she needed space and went on a vacation in the Caribbean, which I paid for, and came back to tell me she fell for a Mexican DJ who worked at the resort. She then moved to the Caribbean with this guy, lived there for a year, moved back to the US and married him. She then annulled the marriage within a month and he moved back. While she was gone, I got set up to divorce her on the grounds of abandonment and got full custody. After the DJ, she hooked up with a guy in Canada via the internet. Amazingly, she moved there to help the guy get custody of his child. I'm still stunned that she did not see how hypocritical she was being and how much this hurt our kids. All this time, I'm raising 3 boys alone. When she left, they were ages 10, 6, and 1.5. After the Canadian relationship fell through, she moved back and now sees the kids on the weekends. My oldest, now 21, is written her off. And as the others grow up, they're seeing her for what she is. Crazy. Happy ending. I found and married a wonderful woman who was there for my boys, and still is, when their mother wasn't. She does not try to replace their mother, just lets them know she's there and loves them. I don't know how my boys would have made it without her. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. Let's see. Getting super hammered and giving me the keys to drive home when I only had a permit at the time. Then getting upset with me when I said I couldn't drive. When I did drive, he would start screaming in my face and throwing things at me while I was driving. He promised his friends that I would drive them home and then get mad and take the keys, leaving them stranded in the middle of the night. This happened more than once, even though it sounds very specific. Go on hours-long rampages against me because I don't know because you don't pay taxes, calling me names and basically anything else he could invent. When I asked him to apologize, he would say he can't apologize for things he didn't remember because nobody ever did anything worth apologizing for when blackout hammered. Right. Violent mood swings, random screaming, yelling, laughing, and generally trying to annoy everyone around him. Got me a pair of Marine shorts for my birthday and had me open the present in front of my parents. He was not in the Marines. My mom still scoffs over that about 5 years later. After I broke up with him, he threatened to end himself, then me and my new boyfriend. He traveled the country as a hobo for a while and would occasionally let me know that it was all my fault and that he was on a pilgrimage. Story 17. My ex actually was engaged to someone he had been with for a total of 9 years when he met me. I pretty much dumped her when he met me, but of course I had no idea. I would never want to be the one to sabotage a relationship. We were long distance, so every time he visited me, he told her he was away for work. Then he visited me for 2 weeks when I was on summer vacation from college. During the visit, he told me that his dad was in the hospital and really sick, would probably have to have a heart replacement. Of course, the whole time he was texting and calling his mom about it, calling in the other room and texting in a super secretive way. He was communicating with his ex-fiancée. Eventually, the relationship fell apart. I snooped on Facebook. I didn't have one. Smart of him. And found her and randomly added her because I was curious. Woke up the next morning to 35 missed calls from him. She proceeded to interrogate me on Facebook. I told the truth for every question. I unintentionally destroyed their relationship, I guess. The crazy part is that she stayed with him. I think they're getting married. He's crazy though because he made up an elaborate story about his dad being on his last breath. Like, why not dump me? I normally think that calling someone crazy is very dismissive. It's like, you're too complicated for me to understand, so I'm just going to label you as undesirable and something I can't stand. But I think lying about a fatal illness is pretty psycho, not gonna lie. Story 18. Man, where do I even start? When I met her, she seemed like a somewhat normal early 20-something. She liked to party, maybe drank more than she should. Seemed a little wild, but hey, one 22-year-old guy wasn't into that sort of thing. But then the crazy started leaking out. Turns out she had been arrested for being intoxicated in public a few years before we had met. Okay, no big deal. Stuff happens. Oh wait, no. She's been arrested multiple times for DIP and had an aggravated DUI. Awesome. This came out after we had gone out for drinks and whatnot a few times when she had driven. Whatever. Need my license on the line. But I did start driving more when we went out. A little bit down the line, it turns out she takes some medication for anxiety. Oh, okay. I mean, whatever. I know a lot of people who takes those. Wait, no, actually. She's on a mix of anti-anxiety medicines, antidepressants, mood stabilizers, and who knows what else. Why would she sell substances for her dad? Sell meaning eats a lot of them and sells some of them to her friends. Okay, I mean, I'm not super down with that, but I'm not really in a situation to be telling her what to do. I expressed my dislike of it and she said she'd stop. Why was she on all of these, you might ask? Turns out she was in a horrendous car accident when she was 19 in which her mom and another person passed away right in front of her, and she sustained life-threatening injuries. She had scars but had always sidestepped the questions, saying something about an operation she had had when she was younger. But yeah, she's running on one kidney while eating substances and drinking like a fiend. Great. Just great. Needless to say, there were plenty of late-night intoxicated fights about who knows what and her flying off the handle because, well, she was, for all intents and purposes, crazy. Whether it was because of the stuff or because of whatever demons the car wreck had created in her mind, the final straw came when she disappeared from her house one night, blackout hammered. I wasn't with her, but her roommate called me, asking if I knew where she was. I told her I hadn't talked to her in a few hours, tried to call and text her multiple times, but I got nothing. I was worried, but didn't have any recourse, so I went to sleep. I wake up to my doorbell ringing at 9 a.m. It's her. She had gone dropped off by her dad. She reels off the story about how she had gone out with a friend who was driving her car, and they got stuck and had to get the car towed. She lived a little bit out of the country, so this kind of made sense. It was a Saturday, so she wasn't going to be able to get her car out of the tow lot until Monday. Well, crappy, but okay. Monday morning rolls around. She still doesn't have her car and asks for a ride to work. No problem. Next day, same thing. Needs a ride, no big deal. She says that she's having some problem getting her car out of the lot because of some mix-up at the DMV or something, but hopefully it'll get lined out soon. A week later, after driving her to work and picking her up most days, I'm hanging out at a party and my friend asks me if I was going to tell him about Aaron's DUI. What? My friend worked with a neighbor of the girl's dad and had gotten the full story. Turns out she had gone blacked out hammered and probably eaten a bunch of stuff and drove out of her house, took out a fence, and crashed her car into someone's barn. Totaled her car. Got arrested and spent the night in the tank. Got picked up and dropped off at my house in the morning. She'd been lying to me for about 2 weeks straight at that point. Needless to say, I confronted her about it and broke it off. Story 19. Late spring 2013. I met this incredibly beautiful woman at an open-air party. We dance, we kiss, and we laugh a lot, and I'm loving it. I've never felt such a deep connection with someone I've just met. Anyways, later in the night, the atmosphere at the party gets tense and some people begin to fight. Somehow I get dragged in the middle of it, and by the time I manage to get out, she's gone. Probably running away scared. I look everywhere. I try to find out if someone at the party knows her, but no one seems to. So just knowing her first name in a city with 1.5 million inhabitants, I go home sad as hell, sure to never see her again. Fast forward to the end of August. It's 2 a.m. and I can't sleep, so I decide to go for a run because it's the only thing that calms me when I'm nervous. Halfway into the run, someone calls my name. I stop, I look back, and there she is, seated on a bench, smiling at me. She tells me she tried everything to find me, but with the little information she had, there was nothing to do. I invited her to my place. She accepts. Fast forward to the beginning of December. We spend most of our free time together. She rarely sleeps at her place anymore, and we still don't believe how lucky we are to have found each other. I have to go through a lot of stuff, keeping a full-time job and flying twice a month back home to help out my family that is in need, and she's always there for me. The more I get to know her, the more I feel something is wrong. She never talks about her past, and some days, her mind seems focused elsewhere. Often I wake up at night and find her awake, sitting on the bed with a bedside table lamp on, apparently doing nothing. She tells me that she's thinking because her head is full of knots she's trying to untie. One morning, she's late for work and she rushes out forgetting to switch her laptop off. I'm curious and worried, so I go through her stuff, but I find nothing except for a folder with my name on it. It contains all the pictures we took in these months, some poems, and another folder. I open that folder and it's full of videos. The more I see, the less I believe. They are all videos of me sleeping and they're creepy as hell. I freak out. I call in sick at work and I spend the day watching those sick videos waiting for her to come home. Hours later, when she's home, I tell her everything and ask for explanations. She doesn't know what to say and she gets angrier and angrier. I ask her to leave and she attacks me, and in the meanwhile, trashes my apartment. Then she takes her stuff and disappears. I call the police and tell them what has happened. They come over to collect evidence, and a couple of days later, they let me know that she has a long history of records for stalking and violent behaviors.
and in the past she has been hospitalized twice for mental and behavior disorders. A couple of weeks later, while cleaning my bedroom, I found a weapon hidden between the mattress and the bed bases. The girl is nowhere to be found. She never went back to work, and her roommate has not seen her since that day. Story 20. Oh Christ, I'm too late for a threat I should own. Okay, everyone I've known, everyone I've ever met, knows I attract and am attracted to crazy women. Mentally unbalanced, bipolar, crazy women. I myself am certified, so it's nice to have someone with a gear or cog loose who knows what it's like. However, this ultimately ends in me being run through. Let's go back to the 4 craziest. I hope no one I know reads this. It'd give me away in a heartbeat. Most recent. We'll call Lana. Outright cruel. I was mistreated as a child, so I didn't get it. The fact that I was being mistreated. Screamed unendingly at me to vent out her frustrations and never could understand that if she would just learn to tell the truth, life would be so much better for her. The dear friends would return. But the ego and the image were too important. Oh, and she messed with other guys, but for some reason in the moment I believed her. She always had a perfect explanation for everything. Hard for your friends to respect you when they see it. Anyway, we got back from San Francisco for an audition for American Idol. She quit college and was lying to her family about everything in her life. I was moronic enough to think I was the one person she could be open and honest with. I was, but she wasn't. Spent 3 days at my place trying to unwind before she went home, and I said something to try and make her feel better, and she insulted me on a very, very personal level. I told her to leave. She told me to go to my room and calm down. Long story short, when she went out of the room, I took all her stuff outside. Told her, she went outside, came back inside. I told her she wasn't welcome, and she said, "You want to talk to me? I will end you." So things kind of escalated quickly. I barred myself in my room until the cops got there, while she tried to chop through my door with a cleaver she pulled out of the kitchen. And when I saw it was when I hightailed. So this was outright the shining level crap, but I tried to play it off like crazy things happen to everybody, but it doesn't. Because of the previous 3. The one before her, let's call Becky, knew her for years. Had a thing for her because she was broken and a true dyed-in-the-wool. Anything that wasn't nailed-down level. I have a thing my friends call broken wing bird syndrome. It gets me to so much stuff. We had been floating in and out of friends with benefits to a relationship, whatever, for a while, and I knew I couldn't keep trying to deal with her being unfaithful. She went to San Francisco, then San Jose, did stuff, pawned her 3 kids on her parents, and basically spiraled down. Called me out of desperation. I got her to come to my house, wired enough, then told her we'd fix everything together she needed before she went and explained everything in detail to her parents. In truth, which they deserved. Out of all this, I wanted 2 things that night. I told her I had 2 rules. Number 1, no more drinking, because she had a lot to drink just driving up from San Jose and she had to try and get some sleep. She was coming down from being up on stuff for like a week solid. She broke the rules, gulping down an entire 5th from my cabinet while I took a whiz, and I told her there were no more chances, and to get out. She went raving mad. Finally, when I told her if she tried to drive instead of sleeping it off in her car, I'd call the cops for her own good, she chased me out into the street and in circles with a car where she pulled from behind her backseat. Cops showed up, took her away. She tried to apologize and make it better months later when she found my new number, but I'm not that stupid. Before her was, let's call her Carrie. She changed my life. I proposed. She accepted. We were happy. I found out there were exactly 3 of my friends she didn't mess with on the side, 7 in a year. I lost nearly all of my friends and friends who stuck by their side, which was horrendously messed up. But when I found out and found out with proof, hard proof, I called her names, which applied, while yelling. Didn't do anything to her, but had a mind to tell her what she was. She actually got away to another state. Then there was Kelsey. Her real name, because she's either gone or untraceable. She had a lot of problems. Her parents were terrible. She had no skills, no education, no self-esteem. And I loved her and wanted to help her more than anything else in the world. She was in and out of mental institutions for a long time, and I finally knew no matter what, I couldn't keep supporting her anymore. It was too much. Even though I loved her, I had to break it off. I waited until she could come home to tell her. Big mistake. She went crazy, and I took a straight one. Hurt like hell. Seriously messed me up. I came and got her, and I held her down until they did. Broke my heart, even while getting hurt. Honorable mention, who I'll call Mallory. She slept with my best friend to get to me the night I met her. Told me so the next day when it didn't work. Should have been enough to never talk to her, but oh, she was so passionate. I went to her house and she started pouring drinks down my throat like there was no tomorrow and obsessing about the two of us. Outright crazy things no rational person would ever think or say. For 5 days, she kept me hammered and would have for longer if I didn't wake up and smell the turbocharged crazy exhaust. First day, she declared we were together. Second day, she planned our first anniversary. You have to understand, she was smoking hot and had an amazing sense of humor, so I was so confused. Third day, I was at her house. She said we were moving in together. Fourth day, we were going to get married. Fifth day, we were going to name our first daughter Gloria. That did it. I told her I was going to sober up and leave, that I had had enough. I didn't agree. I didn't know what I said to make her think I was okay with any of it. I wanted to leave before any more misunderstandings happened. While I sat in the kitchen, my head in my hands, she pulled out a weapon and cleaned it in front of me, told me all about how she was good with it and she had ammo to spare and had a sheriff ones tell her things. I didn't care. Wasn't intimidated into sticking around at least and left. Told her the ride was over. We didn't fit. 3 o'clock in the morning that same night, my doorbell rang. I walked over, opened the door with her standing there, her hand behind her back, sobbing, looking me straight in the eye. And all I thought to say was, "Oh, well, you're not going to fire me, are you?" I talked her down, calmed the situation, sent her home, and moved. All my exes are the crazy exes, but these are just a taste of the ones so crazy they'll end you, which really makes them stick out. Most people only ever have one. I've had 5 people try to end me. Anyway, it's too late for anyone to read this, but I saw it and thought I should have seen something at least. Story 21. I am a crazy ex to someone. I was dealing with some unresolved mental health issues that were much worse than I thought. And over a 2-week window, lost a major career aspiration and she broke things off. Not as a result of that, though. I snapped. Started sending crazy FB messages, calling more than I should have, asking for answers. She took it like a champ. I give her credit. I'm almost surprised she never filed a restraining order. Fast forward a year, we start talking again. I was obsessed with getting my life back on track and being hyperproductive to win her back and show her I wasn't awful. That didn't go too well, and my stress levels ended up skyrocketing when we started talking again. Like my plan was finally going into action. I basically told her I still had feelings, and she said she didn't. That was the final straw in a cocktail of other stressors. And I snapped again, and used the last bit of sanity to check into the hospital so I didn't hurt myself. Anyway, at the end of all that, I'm doing much better. There were some pretty deep-seated issues and skeletons in the closet I needed to resolve, and treatment certainly helped me get there. I'm just about exclusive with someone now, and the dating process has been very even-keel and healthy. I'm far from the same person I was back then. I have mad respect for the last gal that put up with my crap, even though I'm a different person now than I was before. I try to leave her alone, out of respect. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.